The cemetery was still lowering my husband into the ground when my phone buzzed once, then again. I stepped away from the open grave, heels sinking into the wet November grass, and saw the caller ID, Richard Lang, the man Thomas had worked for 15 years. When I answered, his voice cracked like thin ice. "Claire, you need to come to the office, right now. You need to see this." Claire Harrow is 42, a quiet librarian who married her high school sweetheart and believed their life was ordinary until the morning Thomas never came home from his night shift. The house in the small coastal town of Eldridge smells of salt and old books. The fog never quite lifts, even at noon. On the gray afternoon of the funeral, everything feels muffled. Grief, wind, the distant crash of waves, until that single phone call pulls the first thread. The rain hadn't decided yet. It hovered in the air like a held breath, tiny needles of mist that made every black umbrella shine the same dull silver. I stood at the edge of the rectangle cut into the earth, watching the casket sink so slowly it felt like the ground itself was reluctant. Thomas's casket. Polished walnut, brass handles catching what little light the sky would give. People murmured the final prayer, voices low, the way you speak in a house where someone is sleeping and will never wake. My shoes had sunk an inch into the grass. I could feel the cold mud through the leather soles, patient, waiting to claim more than just heels. Then my phone trembled against my ribs. Once. Twice. The screen said Richard Lang, Thomas's boss, the man who used to call our house at Christmas just to say thank you for lending him Thomas another year. I turned away from the grave without thinking, walked past the rows of headstones, past Aunt Ruth dabbing her eyes with a tissue already shredded, past the funeral men in their neat, dark suits, standing back like polite shadows. I walked into the voices faded behind me, and all I could hear was the wet grass brushing my stockings. I pressed answer. "Claire?" Richard's voice cracked on my name like it surprised him I'd picked up. "Claire, I'm sorry. I know I wouldn't call today if it wasn't." The wind carried a gust of rain across my face. I tasted nettle. "Richard, slow down." "I can't. Not on the phone." A pause filled with his breathing, quick and shallow. "Thomas left something in his desk. Bottom drawer, the one he always kept locked. He made me swear, if anything ever happens, it goes straight to you and no one else. Only you." I looked back toward the grave. From here, it was just a dark hole with people standing around it like paper cutouts. The priest had his hands folded, waiting for me to return so he could finish. "Richard, he's..." His voice dropped so low, I almost lost it. "I know, Claire, but you need to come. After, please." There was something in the way he said please. Not polite. Afraid. I closed my eyes. The rain finally chose. It began to fall in earnest, soft as forgiveness at first, then harder, drumming on every umbrella like impatient fingers. "I'll come," I said. He exhaled, a sound like a man setting down something heavy. "Thank you. I'll be here. I'll wait." The call ended. I stood there a moment longer, phone still against my ear, though the line was dead. The cemetery smelled of wet stone and cut grass, and lilies beginning to bruise. When I walked back, the casket had reached its place. Ropes slack. The first shovelful of earth hit the lid with a dull, final thud that no one else seemed to feel in their chest the way I did. One by one, people stepped forward to drop their flowers, roses mostly, white like Thomas always brought me on the nights he worked late, as if whiteness could apologize. I waited until the end. My turn came. I held a single white rose, stem wrapped in black ribbon. My fingers were so cold they barely bent. I leaned over the edge.
The rain had turned the dirt to chocolate-colored soup. The casket lid gleamed, slick and dark. I let the rose go. It fell. But it didn't land on the wood. A sudden breath of wind caught it, spun it once, and dropped it face down into the mud beside the grave. Petals crushed instantly. Stem snapped. I stared at it, a white star drowning. Someone touched my elbow, soft, respectful. Time to step back. I did. The priest said a few more words I didn't hear. The men began to shovel in earnest now, each scoop louder than the last, filling the hole with wet, heavy sounds. My phone felt heavier in my coat pocket than the rose had in my hand. Richard was afraid of a drawer, afraid of whatever waited inside it. And for the first time since the police knocked on my door and at 4 a.m, something colder than grief moved through me. It had edges. I looked one last time at the grave. Half filled now, the white rose already buried under fresh earth, invisible. I turned away before it was gone completely. Richard was waiting, and whatever Thomas had locked away was waiting with him. I walked toward the cars, heels pulling free from the mud with soft, reluctant kisses. The rain kept falling. It sounded almost like someone whispering in a hurry. The road inland was black glass after the rain. My headlights cut through nothing but fog and the occasional deer eyes glowing on the shoulder. 20 miles felt like 50 tonight. Every mile marker whispered the same thing. Turn around. Go home. Let the dead stay buried. But the grave was already closed, and something else had opened. I pulled into the parking garage at 9:30. The building rose above me, tall windows, blind and silver under the floodlights. Most of the levels were empty. Only a handful of cars sat like sleeping animals. Thomas's spot, space 412, was dark. Of course. I parked 2 rows away, as if someone might notice and care. The night security guard Marco looked up from his little desk. He knew my face from Christmas parties, from bringing Thomas soup when deadlines kept him late. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Mrs. Harrow, I'm so sorry." He said it like he'd practiced in the mirror. I just nodded. He pressed the button. The glass doors sighed apart. The elevator remembered me too. Same soft ding, same faint smell of lemon polish. I watched the numbers climb. 10, 11, 12. Until the doors slid open onto the executive floor. Dark. All the offices black except one stripe of warm light leaking beneath Richard's door, thin as a knife cut. I walked the carpeted hallway I'd walked 100 times in better shoes. My heels didn't click tonight. The carpet swallowed every sound. I could hear my own breathing, small and careful. I didn't knock. I just turned the handle and stepped inside. Richard was standing by the window, back to me, city lights glittering 20 stories below. He held a crystal tumbler, amber liquid catching the desk lamp like trapped fire. He hadn't taken a sip, I could tell by the level. He turned when the door latched. His face was thinner than I remembered, eyes red-rimmed behind the glasses. The powerful man who once made Thomas laugh about golf handicaps looked folded in on himself. "Claire." One word almost lost in the hum of the building. I closed the door. The click sounded louder than it should. He crossed the room in 3 unsteady steps and took my hands. His were ice, trembling. "You came," he whispered, as if I might still vanish. I looked past him to Thomas's office. The connecting door was open. I could see the edge of the desk, the leathered chair pushed in neatly, the way Thomas always left it. Richard followed my gaze. He let go of my hands and reached into his pocket for a single brass key. Not Thomas's keyring, his own. "He kept it on me," he said, "since the police released the floor." He moved first, like he needed to prove the way. I followed. Thomas's office smelled of him so strongly, I almost turned back. Cold coffee in the mug he called the Survivor. Cedar and something green from the cologne he splashed on every morning without looking. Stacks of paper still waiting for signatures that would never come. Richard stopped at the desk. His fingers hesitated above the bottom drawer, then inserted the key. The lock gave a small, wounded click. He pulled the drawer open 6 inches and stepped aside. Didn't look in. Just stared at the carpet like it might save him. Inside lay one thing. A plain manila envelope, thick, sealed with clear tape that had started to yellow. My name, written across the front. In Thomas's handwriting. Steady, slanted, impatient. Claire. I reached. My hand didn't shake until it closed around the envelope. Then it did. Paper is heavier than you expect when it carries a whole life. Richard's voice came from very far away. He gave me this 18 months ago. Said if anything ever happened, if he missed 2 check-ins in a row, I was to call you the same day and put this in your hands. No one else. Not the police, not me. He swallowed hard.
You know how he got about security protocols. He tried for a smile. It died before it reached his eyes. I pressed the envelope to my coat, over my heart. Felt the edges bite through wool and skin. "Richard?" My voice sounded like someone else's. What was he afraid of? He looked at me then. Really looked. And in that moment, he wasn't the CEO, wasn't Thomas's mentor, wasn't the man who signed the bonus checks. He was just a man who'd been asked to keep a secret too long. "I don't know," he said, "but whatever it is, it's in there, and it starts with you." The desk lamp flickered once, like a warning. Outside, far below, a car alarm gave a single, lonely whoop and fell silent. I slipped the envelope inside my coat, deep, where no one could see the shape. Richard watched me do it. His shoulders dropped another inch. "Take it home, Claire. Read it alone." He walked me to the elevator. Didn't speak again. When the doors opened, he reached out as if to touch my arm, then thought better. The doors closed on his face. Pale, small, a man waiting for something to fall. The ride down was longer than the ride up. I stood in the polished box, clutching the envelope against my ribs, and felt Thomas's handwriting burn through every layer. Whatever waited inside had outlived him, and now it had my name on it. The garage was colder when I stepped out. My car sat alone under the buzzing light, waiting. I slid behind the wheel, locked the doors, and only then let myself look at the envelope in the dome light. Thick pages shifted inside like restless bones. I turned off the light, sat in the dark a long time. The building above me was almost empty now, but I could still feel that thin blade of light on the top floor, holding its breath. I started the engine. The road home stretched ahead, black and endless. Whatever Thomas had hidden, it was riding home with me tonight, and something told me the house would never feel quiet again. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded like a secret being locked again. I stood alone in Thomas's office, envelope heavy against my chest. The building had gone quieter than buildings ever should, just the low hum of the vents and my own pulse in my ears. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered like they were underwater. Inside, only the faint glow from the hallway stripe under the door. I didn't want to turn on the big overhead lights. That would feel too much like disturbing him. Instead, I reached for the small brass desk lamp he always kept tilted just so. My fingers brushed the switch. Click. A pool of warm gold spilled across the leather blotter, across the dust that had already started to settle where his elbows used to rest. I sat down in his chair. It was still adjusted for him, too high, too far back. My feet barely touched the floor. The envelope felt warmer now, like it had its own heartbeat. I slid a finger under the flap. The tape gave with a tired rip. Inside, pages and pages of Thomas's handwriting, the same impatient slant I used to tease him about. On top, a single black USB drive and a tiny plastic sleeve. A white label, my name written in Sharpie. Claire. I set the drive aside like it might burn me. Then I took the first letter. The paper was thin, almost tissue, as if he didn't want it to take up space in the world. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I lied every single day. I stopped breathing for a second. The room was so cold I could see my breath drift across the lamplight like a ghost leaving my body. I read on. He wrote about numbers at first. Large transfers, offshore accounts, shell companies with names like Birds, Kingfisher, Heron, Wren. Money that wasn't his but moved through his hands because someone trusted him, or feared him. He never said which. He wrote about phone calls that came after midnight, voices altered, calm in the way a knife is calm, about envelopes left under the windshield wiper of his car while he bought milk, about the night he found our back door unlocked even though we'd both checked it twice. I turned the page. He wrote about the evenings he came home late and kissed my forehead and said only, "Rough day at the office," how he sat in the dark garage for 20 minutes sometimes before coming inside, just to be sure no one followed. He memorized the sound of my breathing when I slept, because it was the only thing that still felt clean. Tears fell onto the paper, small dark stars blooming on the ink. I didn't wipe them away. I just kept reading. He wrote that he tried to stop it, tried to push the money back, refuse the next favor, say no. But every no tightened something around us he couldn't see but could feel, like a wire pulled slowly around the house while we slept. He wrote that he started the letters because he was afraid there wouldn't be time to say it to my face. 18 months of letters, folded small, hidden in the one place he thought no one would look until it was too late. The lamp flickered. Just once. Long enough for the shadows to jump. I looked up. The room looked the same, but didn't feel it, as though the walls had leaned in to read over my shoulder. My fingers found the next page. I love you more than the truth, and that's why I kept it from you. If they ever come for me, run. Don't trust anyone who says they're helping. I pressed the letter to my mouth so the sob wouldn't escape. It tasted of ink and salt, and the faint cedar of his skin still caught in the paper fibers. The USB drive sat, waiting under the lamp, small and black and patient. I turned it over in my fingers. Cold, light as a bullet. I slipped the letters back into the envelope, every page trembling, then the drive into the pocket of my coat, deep, next to my heart. The envelope I folded once, twice, until it was a hard square I could hide in my fist. I stood. The chair rolled back with a whisper. I reached for the lamp switch, paused. For a moment I let the light stay on him. On the empty chair, the waiting mug, the place where his hand should have been. I wanted to say, "I forgive you." I wanted to say, "Come back." All I managed was a breath that shook. Click. The lamp went dark. The office swallowed itself again. I walked to the door, envelope pressed against my ribs like body armor. My footsteps sounded too loud now, like someone else walking behind me. In the hallway, the stripe of light felt colder. The elevator waited. Doors open, a polite mouth. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. Eyes too wide, mouth folded small. A woman carrying her husband's fear in a pocket. The descent was soundless. 20 floors of night rushing up to meet me. When the doors opened to the parking garage, the air smelled of concrete and rain that had never fallen here. My car sat alone under the flickering fluorescent. I didn't start it yet. I sat in the dark with the envelope in my lap and listened to the building settle above me, heavy with whatever it now knew. Thomas had been afraid. Every day. And he'd carried it alone so I could sleep. The question wasn't why he never told me. The question was what I was going to do now that I knew. I turned the key. The engine woke with a soft cough. Somewhere above, on the 12th floor, the lamp I'd left off still held the shape of its last warmth. I pulled out of the garage. The envelope rode against my heart all the way home, beating with a pulse that no longer belonged to the living. The fog wasn't rolling in. It was already there, waiting for me the moment I left the garage, thick as wet wool pressed against the windshield. My headlights only made it worse. 2 pale tunnels that ended 10 feet ahead and then dissolved into nothing. The road could have dropped straight into the sea for all I knew. I just kept the white line close on my left and drove. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, seatbelt buckled around it like a child. Every turn made the pages inside shift with a soft, papery sigh. Thomas's words were still warm in my head, looping. Kingfisher Holdings, 380,000 moved on the 14th of last month. A phone number, with no name. A sentence I couldn't unsee. If they ever touch you, it's because I failed. I turned the radio off miles ago. Silence felt safer. The coastal highway was empty at this hour. No taillights ahead, no oncoming glare. Just the low hum of tires on wet asphalt and the occasional slap of wipers I'd forgotten to switch off. I could taste salt on my lips whenever I breathed. The ocean was out there somewhere to my right, black and patient. I kept glancing at the envelope, kept hearing his voice and the curves of his handwriting. I'm sorry I lied every single day. 15 years of good mornings and burnt toast and Saturday lions, and every one of them built on something rotting underneath. A red light appeared out of the fog like a warning. I braked harder than I meant to. The car rocked, envelope sliding forward against the belt. I waited. The light stayed red. No cross traffic, no one. Just the soft tick of the indicator I hadn't turned on. That's when I saw it in the rearview mirror. 2 pale eyes floating in the gray. Headlights, far back, but not too far. A dark sedan, shape blurred by mist, holding the exact same distance no matter how the fog swallowed everything else. My mouth went dry. The light finally flipped to green. I eased forward, checked the mirror again. The sedan moved too. Same speed, same gap. I pressed the accelerator a little harder. The engine woke with a low growl that sounded too loud in all that quiet. The fog rushed at me faster, parting only at the last second. My hands tightened on the wheel until the leather creaked. I took the old way home without deciding to. Turned left onto Harbor Street where the shops were shuttered tight, rolled up awnings dripping. The sedan followed. Its lights never brightened, never dimmed. Just there, patient. I passed the closed bakery where Thomas used to buy cinnamon rolls on Sundays. Past the laundromat with its one flickering sign. Past the bench where we once kissed in the rain because we were young and stupid and happy. The road curved along the bluff now. Ocean somewhere below the drop, unseen. I could hear it though, slow, heavy breaths against the rocks. I turned again, sudden, onto Pier Road. Gravel spat under the tires. The sedan hesitated, half a heartbeat, then followed. My heart was beating so hard I felt it in my teeth. I didn't speed up anymore. I just drove, slow, like I wasn't afraid. Like I wasn't clutching the wheel white-knuckled with one hand and the envelope with the other. The pier lights appeared ahead, weak amber bulbs strung along the railing. Half of them burnt out. I rolled past the bait shop, past the empty parking spaces, past the bench where I turned into the little overlook at the very end, cut the engine. The fog pressed against the windows at once, thick and curious. I watched the mirror. The sedan came slow. Its lights brushed over my bumper, soft as fingers. Then it kept going, passed me without pausing, disappeared around the bend toward town. No brake lights, no glance, just gone. I sat there a long time. Long enough for the windows to fog from my breathing. Long enough for the envelope to leave deep creases in my palm. The ocean kept its steady rhythm below. In, out, like it had all the time in the world. I started the car again. Drove the last 3 miles home slower than walking. No lights behind me now. Maybe there never had been. Maybe the fog just likes to play tricks on widows. I pulled into our driveway. The house was dark, curtains open the way I'd left them. No smoke, no broken windows, just quiet. I killed the engine and sat. The envelope was warm now from my grip. Thomas's secrets pressed against my ribs like another heart. I looked at the rearview mirror one more time. Empty road, empty night. But I knew better now. Someone else knew what was in that envelope. Someone who could drive without headlights and fog. Someone who could wait. I gathered the pages to my chest and got out. The gravel crunched soft under my shoes, apologetic. The front door key shook just enough to miss the lock twice. Inside, the house smelled of yesterday's coffee and the cold that sneaks in when no one is home to chase it out. I locked the door behind me, turned the deadbolt, leaned my back against the wood. The envelope rose and fell with my breathing. Out there in the fog, a dark car was still moving through the night. And somewhere, someone was deciding what came next. I closed my eyes, listened to the quiet house settle around me like a held breath. Whatever Thomas had started, it wasn't buried with him after all. It was just getting started. The key turned too easily in the lock, like the door had been waiting up for me. I stepped inside, and the house didn't greet me the way it used to. No warm pocket of air carrying yesterday's coffee, no faint creak from the radiator saying welcome home. Just cold stillness and the smell absence. I closed the door softly, as if a louder click might wake something that should stay asleep. The hallway light felt harsh. I left it off. Moonlight through the fan window painted silver bars across the floorboards. I stood there in my coat, dripping fog, envelope still pressed to my chest like a second, heavier heart. Every corner looked different tonight. The umbrella stand leaned the same way it always had, but now it looked like it was listening. The framed photo on the console, our wedding day, both of us laughing at something just out of shot, felt posed now, staged. I couldn't remember what had been so funny. I walked through to the kitchen without turning on a single lamp. My shoes left faint wet prints that disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. I set the envelope on the table, gentle, like it might bruise. Then I opened the cupboard and took down a wine glass. The bottle of red Thomas never finished. I poured. Watched the liquid climb the glass, dark as dried blood in the dimness. I never lifted it to my lips. The laptop sat on the counter where he always left it, lid half closed like a sleeping animal. Silver, scratched along the edges from years of being carried home in the same leather bag. I opened it. The screen woke with a soft blue breath. Password prompt glowing. I typed our wedding date, 1014-2006. The one we chose because the leaves were turning and the courthouse steps smelled like rain. Enter. It opened. Folders lined up neat as soldiers. Dates for names. 2023, September. 2024, January. 2024, June. I clicked the most recent. Spreadsheets unfurled. Columns of numbers that made my stomach fold in on itself. Transfers. Accounts ending in places I'd never heard of. Cayman, Seychelles, Liechtenstein. Names that weren't names. Kestrel LT, Osprey Trust, Wren Holdings. Thomas's initials in the corner of every page, small and careful. I clicked again. Scanned documents. Handwritten notes in his writing, photocopied. A list of dates and times and places. Gas station on Route 12. Pier parking lot after midnight. The bench behind the library where I sometimes ate lunch. Then the photos. Grainy. Taken from a distance, at night, flash off. Thomas in his navy coat, collar turned up, standing beside a car I didn't recognize, handing over a thick envelope to a man who stayed in shadow. Another photo, same man walking away, back to the camera, street lamp catching the edge of a watch. I clicked to the next one, and the air left my lungs. Our house, our little blue house with the crooked shutter, taken from across the street, through a car window dotted with rain. The porch light we always left on glowed soft yellow. In the upstairs window, our bedroom, you could just make out the shape of someone there. Me. Curtain pulled back an inch, looking out at nothing. The timestamp in the corner, 3 months ago, 2:14 a.m.
He was downstairs that night. Couldn't sleep. Said he was getting water. I remembered standing at that exact window, watching the street, because I thought I heard a car idling. Someone had been watching me watch for them. I sat very still. The wineglass sat untouched, breathing its faint vinegar scent. The laptop screen was the only light in the room, cold and blue on my face. I closed the folder, opened another. More photos. Our mailbox. The back of Thomas's car in the grocery lot. Me, walking from the library to the bus stop, head down against the wind, unaware. Every ordinary moment, cataloged. Every ordinary moment, performed. The house made a small sound then. Settling, maybe, or shifting its weight. I looked up. The kitchen window reflected me back at myself, pale, eyes too wide, hair still damp from fog. I reached out and closed the laptop. The room dropped into true darkness. Only the faint red standby light pulsing on the counter like a slow heartbeat. I picked up the wineglass and poured it down the sink. The glug-glug sounded too loud. I rinsed the glass, set it upside down on the draining board, exactly where Thomas always left it. Then I stood in the middle of the kitchen and listened. The refrigerator hummed. The clock above the stove ticked. Once. Twice. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard gave its familiar creak, the one in the hallway outside our bedroom. I hadn't moved. I wrapped my arms around myself, envelope and laptop both now tucked under one elbow. The house felt bigger, suddenly. Too many windows. Too many shadows that knew my shape. I walked to the front door and checked the deadbolt twice. Then the back door. Then every window on the ground floor, fingers testing latches that suddenly seemed flimsy as paper. When I came back to the kitchen, the laptop screen had gone to sleep, but the red light still blinked. Watching. I left it there. Took only the envelope upstairs. In our bedroom, I didn't turn on the light. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 15 years and stared at the window where I'd stood 3 months ago. The street outside was empty. Of course it was. But someone had stood there once. Long enough to take a picture. Long enough to wait. I pulled the curtains closed with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. The fabric whispered shut like a secret finally told. I lay down fully dressed, envelope beneath my pillow.
The mattress still dipped on his side, even though no one had slept there in days. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass, patient. Inside, the house and I kept perfectly still, both pretending we weren't being watched, both knowing the performance was over. And somewhere in the dark, a camera shutter I never heard had already clicked its last quiet photo of the life I thought was mine. The morning came in pale and reluctant, the kind of gray light that slips under curtains and apologizes for waking you. I had not slept. The bed was too wide, the sheets too cold on Thomas's side. I lay watching the ceiling fan turn slow circles until the alarm clock gave its polite chirp at 7:15. I reached over and silenced it with one finger, the way he used to when it was my turn to open the library. My voice sounded like gravel when I called in sick. "Food poisoning," I said. "Might be 2 days." Mrs. Ellis made the soft, sympathetic noises people save for widows and hung up gently. I dressed in yesterday's black, same skirt, same sweater, because nothing else felt worth the effort. The envelope and the USB drive I slipped into the inside pocket of my coat, close as skin. The drive to the office building took 23 minutes. I counted every one. The parking garage felt different in daylight. Brighter. Colder. Only a handful of cars, none of them Silver's Audi. I parked in the visitor section this time, far from Thomas's empty space. The lobby was quiet. Marco wasn't on duty. A younger guard I didn't know glanced at my old visitor badge and waved me through with the same practiced sorrow. The elevator remembered the floor anyway. 12. The doors opened to silence so complete I could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead, thin and insect-like. No phones ringing, no keyboards clacking, just the faint scent of lemon cleaner and something metallic underneath. Richard's secretary Ellen sat at her desk sorting mail with small, precise movements. She looked up when my shadow crossed her blotter. Her eyes were puffy. "Claire," a whisper more than a greeting. She glanced toward Richard's closed door like it might bite. I asked if he was in. Ellen shook her head once. "He hasn't come in, didn't call. That's not like him." She tried for a smile. It wobbled and died. I walked past her before she could ask why I was there. Richard's door was locked. I tried Thomas's anyway. Also locked. The hallway stretched empty. A cleaning cart stood abandoned outside the supply closet. Bucket half full, mop leaning like a tired soldier. No cleaner in sight. The wheels had left faint wet tracks that were already drying. I slipped into Thomas's office using the master key I still had from the days I brought him dinner.
The family photo that used to sit beside his monitor, gone. The coffee mug with the chipped handle, gone. Even the little succulent I gave him for his birthday, wilted but stubborn, had vanished from the windowsill. Only the furniture remained, clean and waiting for someone new. I stood in the middle of the carpet and felt the absence like a tooth pulled clean. I don't know why I knelt. Maybe because the room felt lower today. Maybe because grief lives closer to the floor. I ran my hand along the underside of Thomas's chair, fingers searching for something I couldn't name. They found paper. A single yellow sticky note, stuck where no one would look unless they were desperate. Black ink. Richard's handwriting, hurried and slanted. "They know you have it now." The words blurred, then sharpened, then punched the air from my lungs. My knees gave way. I sank to the cold tile, skirt pooling around me like spilled ink. The note trembled between my fingers. Richard had come back after I left. After midnight, maybe. After everyone was gone. He had sat in this chair, written this warning, and stuck it where only I might find it. And then he had disappeared. I pressed the note to my lips so the paper tasted my breath. It tasted like fear. Footsteps in the hallway, heavy, unhurried. Security, maybe, or someone else. I folded the sticky note smaller, until it was a hard square I could hide in my fist, slipped it into the same pocket as the drive. I stood on legs that didn't feel like mine, smoothed my skirt, walked out calm, past the abandoned cart, past Ellen, who was staring at her blank computer screen like it might speak. The elevator came too quickly. I watched the numbers drop, 12, 11, 10, each one taking me further from answers. In the lobby, the younger guard glanced up. I nodded once, polite as a stranger. Outside, the November air bit my cheeks. The sky was the color of old pewter. I walked to my car with measured steps, key ready, not running, not yet. I sat behind the wheel a long time, engine cold, hands in my lap. Richard was gone, his office emptied like a warning, and someone had left me a message in a dead man's chair. I pulled the sticky note out again, smoothed it against the steering wheel. They know you have it now. I looked up at the building, 12 floors of glass, reflecting a woman who no longer recognized her own life. Somewhere up there, a cleaning cart waited for a cleaner who might never return. Somewhere in this city, Richard was running, or hiding, or already gone the way Thomas went. I started the car. The engine turned over on the first try, obedient. I pulled out of the garage slow, signal blinking, though no one was behind me. The note went back into my pocket, pressed against the USB drive like siblings keeping each other warm. I didn't know who they were yet, but they knew my name now, and I had just become the only person left who could finish what Thomas started, or disappear trying. The wipers had been sweeping the same slow rhythm for 90 miles, back and forth, like they were trying to wipe the whole week away. Portland appeared through the drizzle, low buildings huddled under a sky the color of wet ash. I took the exit Thomas always took when we visited Lena, past the same tired billboards and the same bridge that sways just enough to remind you you're alive. I parked outside her little blue bungalow on the east side. The porch light was already on, though it was only 3 in the afternoon. A single pumpkin sat by the door, uncarved, beginning to soften at one side. I sat in the car longer than I meant to, hands on the wheel, watching rain bead and slide down the windshield like tears that belonged to someone else. Finally, I took the sticky note, the USB drive, and the folded envelope and tucked them deep inside my coat. Then I walked up the wet path and rang the bell before courage changed its mind. The door opened almost at once. Lena stood there in an old cardigan the color of oatmeal, hair twisted up with a pencil. Her face was pale, eyes ringed violet, but not surprised, not even a flicker. She simply stepped aside. "Come in, Claire." Her voice was soft, the way it got when she was very tired or very drunk. Today, it was tired. I crossed the threshold. The house smelled of cinnamon and damp wool and something faintly medicinal. She closed the door behind me with both hands, like she was sealing us in. No hug. Not yet. We weren't ready. She led me to the kitchen. Same pine table we'd eaten Thanksgiving at for 12 years. Same kettle, beginning its low whistle. Neither of us mentioned it. We sat opposite each other. Rain tapped the window, polite, patient. Lena wrapped her hands around her mug, as if they were cold. They shook just enough to make tiny circles on the surface of the tea. "He wrote to me," she said at last. Not wrote, emailed. Little messages that didn't make sense at the time. "If anything happens, there's a box in the attic behind the Christmas ornaments. Give it to Claire. Don't..."
She looked at me then. Really looked. I thought he was sick. Cancer or something he didn't want you to watch him die from? I asked. He said no. Just be ready. Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed her lips together until the color came back. I reached across the table and covered her trembling fingers with mine. They were ice. "Show me," I whispered. Lena nodded once, pushed her chair back,
The legs scraped the linoleum like an old apology. We climbed the narrow stairs. The attic pull-cord light came on with a tired click. Dust floated in the weak bulb's glow. She moved boxes aside, Christmas, Halloween, baby clothes she never threw away, and pulled out a plain banker's box sealed with silver duct tape. My name again, in Thomas's handwriting, across the top. She set it on the floor between us, knelt, looked up. "I haven't opened it," she said. "I promised." I knelt too. My knees cracked like kindling. I peeled the tape slowly. It came away with a soft rip that sounded too loud in the quiet. Inside, a second USB drive, red this time. A thin stack of printed pages, duplicates of some I already had, and a small external hard drive, wrapped in a man's handkerchief that still smelled faintly of cedar. At the bottom, a single DVD in a paper sleeve. Written on it in marker, "Play Me Alone." Lena lifted the DVD with 2 fingers, as if it might burn her. Her hands shook harder now. We went downstairs again. She put it in the old laptop on the coffee table, the one with the cracked corner from when Thomas dropped it 2 Christmases ago. The screen woke. No password this time, just Thomas. He was sitting in our bedroom, the one I'd left only hours ago. The lamp beside the bed cast a warm circle on his face. His eyes were red, swollen. He hadn't shaved in days. He looked straight into the camera and tried to smile. It broke halfway. "Claire Bear," he started, voice rough, like he'd been crying or shouting or both. "If Lena is playing this, I'm not there anymore. I tried to fix it. I thought if I moved the last payment, if I wore a wire, if I just gave them enough rope, I thought I could end it. I was wrong." He swallowed, looked off camera for a second, then back. "There are copies here. Everything. Enough to burn them down if someone brave uses it. I wasn't brave enough. I just wanted us safe. I love you more than the truth, Claire. I love you more than being the good guy. Tell Lena thank you. Tell her I'm sorry I dragged her into the dark with me." His voice cracked completely on the last word. He reached forward. The screen went black. The room was so quiet, I could hear the rain give up and stop. Lena sat very still, hands in her lap, tears sliding down without permission. I closed the laptop gently. The click sounded final. He had trusted her with the same secret twice, once to Richard, once to the only blood he had left. 2 lifeboats for the same sinking ship. I pulled Lena into my arms then. She came stiff at first, then folded, face against my shoulder, soaking my coat with silent tears. We stayed like that until the light outside turned from gray to indigo. When we pulled apart, her eyes were steady for the first time. "What do we do now?" she whispered. I looked at the box sitting innocently on her coffee table, at the red drive, at the handkerchief that still carried the ghost of his scent. I didn't have an answer yet, but I knew one thing. The secret wasn't buried with Thomas anymore. It was sitting between 2 women in a quiet house in Portland, breathing, waiting, and somewhere out there, they were waiting too. The sky had already given up on the day. A bruised violet light hung over the water, thin and tired, like it knew the sun wasn't coming back. I left the car in the little gravel lot at the foot of the pier and walked out over the planks, because the house had started to feel like a mouth that wouldn't stop whispering. Every room smelled of Thomas's secrets now. I needed air that hadn't been breathed by lies. The wind came straight off the ocean, sharp with salt and diesel and something older. It tore at my coat, snapped the hem against my legs, tried to push me back towards land. I kept walking. The boards under my boots were slick, silvered with spray. Gulls wheeled overhead, crying like abandoned children. At the far end, where the pier widens into a platform for unloading crates, I stopped, leaned on the railing, watched the black water slap the pilings far below, hungry, patient. The fog wasn't thick yet, just a promise gathering out past the breakers. I closed my eyes and let the wind scour my face until it burned. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the cold to find the gap at my collar. Long enough for the gulls to lose interest. Footsteps behind me. slow, deliberate. The creak of old boots on older wood. I turned. An old man came out of the dusk. Yellow oilskin jacket patched with duct tape, fisherman's cap pulled low, face carved deep by wind and disappointment and too many winters.
He stopped 3 paces away, hands in pockets, studied me the way sailors study clouds. "Claire Harrow," he said, not a question. The wind carried his voice straight into my chest. I couldn't speak, just nodded once. He glanced over his shoulder, quick, like checking the fog for listeners, then took 1 step closer. "Thomas used to buy me coffee at Millie's, sat right there on that bench." He tilted his chin toward the splintered seat bolted to the railing. "Asked about boats that left after dark, never the big ones, the little ones, the ones that don't file papers." His voice was low, almost lost under the wind and the water. I found my tongue. "You knew him?" A nod, small. "He paid in cash, always left the change, said he had a wife who liked flowers." My throat closed. The old man reached into his pocket slow, like he was drawing a knife no one needed to see. Pulled out a folded scrap of paper, once white, now soft from handling. Held it between 2 cracked fingers. "He gave me this 3 weeks ago. Said if anything happened and you ever came walking out here looking like the world was sitting on your shoulders, give it to you." He held it out. I took it. Our fingers brushed, his rough as barnacles, mine numb. The paper was damp, folded tight into a square no bigger than a matchbook. I opened it under the weak orange lamp above us. Numbers, latitude and longitude, handwritten in Thomas's hurried script. Below them, 02:17 a.m. 2 nights from now. I looked up. The old man's eyes were steady but sad. "Your husband wanted out," he murmured. "Whole way out. New names, quiet country where the tide don't speak English." He took a half step back. "That's all I know, miss. That's all he paid me to know." He touched the brim of his cap, polite as an old dance, then turned and walked away. His footsteps faded into the wind long before the fog swallowed him. I stood alone. The scrap trembled in my hand like a trapped moth. Gulls screamed overhead, circling tighter, angry at the dark. I looked at the coordinates again. Somewhere out past the headland, somewhere black and deep and waiting. Thomas had planned an escape. For both of us, maybe, or just for him. The paper didn't say. I folded it smaller, smaller, until it disappeared into my fist. Slipped it into the same pocket that held the sticky note, the drives, the last pieces of him. The wind shifted. The fog began to roll in earnest now, soft and deliberate, erasing the shore behind me. I stayed until the lamp above me was only a blurred halo, until the pier felt like a ship already leaving. 2 nights. I turned back toward land. My footsteps sounded different now, lighter or heavier, I couldn't tell. The gulls followed me halfway, scolding. Then even they gave up. Out on the water something moved, far beyond the breakers. A running light winked once and vanished. I didn't know if it was the boat Thomas paid for, or the one that would come for me if I went. But I knew one thing. In 48 hours the tide would turn, and I would be standing on a different edge, deciding whether to step into the dark or let it step into me. The clock on the dashboard blowed 1:47 a.m. when I cut the engine at the edge of the hidden cove. I had driven with the headlights off for the last mile, following the pale ribbon of dirt road by memory and moonlight alone. The fog had lifted just enough to let the stars feel close, sharp, almost accusing. I sat listening to the tick of cooling metal and the far-off hush of waves that sounded like someone whispering, "Hurry up and decide." I was early, on purpose.
If this was a trap, I wanted to see it set. I stepped out. The air was colder here, wetter, carrying the smell of rotting kelp and diesel ghosts. My boots sank into the soft sand as I walked down the narrow path between the dunes. The beam of the small flashlight I allowed myself trembled across seagrass bent double by the wind. The cove opened below me like a secret someone had forgotten to close. A crescent of black water cupped by jagged rocks. And there, in the middle, a single boat. Not large, a weathered fishing vessel maybe 35 feet. Running lights off, only the faint glow from the wheelhouse giving away that someone lived inside it. I stood at the edge of the tree line a long time, long enough for my breath to stop clouding, long enough for the gulls to quit scolding and settle. No other cars, no other footsteps, only the soft slap of water against the hull and my own heart counting down the seconds. 2:11 a.m. I walked down the sand. The boat's engine coughed once, low, like it had been waiting for the weight of my gaze. A figure appeared on deck, a woman, short-cropped hair.
She moved like someone who had spent more years on water than land. She didn't speak, just threw a rope ladder over the side. It hit the gunwale with a soft thud. I climbed. The ladder swayed with every step, rope rough against my palms. When I reached the deck, she caught my wrist, not rough, not gentle, and steadied me. Up close, the scar looked older than I was. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds just before they break. "You're Claire," she said, voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. I nodded. She released my wrist, gestured toward the wheelhouse. Inside, wind's teeth tonight. I followed. The cabin was warm, lit by a single red bulb above the chart table. Smelled of coffee, engine oil, and wet wool. Charts were spread everywhere, curling at the edges. A half-eaten sandwich sat under a glass to keep it from sliding. She closed the door behind us. The world shrank to the sound of water against wood and the low thrum of the idling engine. She poured coffee into a chipped enamel mug without asking if I wanted it, pushed it across the table. "Thomas paid for 6 months," she said. "Up front, cash. Said maybe one night, maybe never. Said if a woman came alone, no questions, just take her where the envelope says." I wrapped my hands around the mug. The heat hurt in the best way. She watched me for a long moment. "You're early." I needed to see if anyone else was. A flicker of something, approval, maybe, crossed her face. No one else. She reached under the chart table and drew out a waterproof pouch the color of dried blood. Thick, heavy. My name written on it in Thomas's handwriting, the same impatient slant I knew from birthday cards and grocery lists. My throat closed. She set it between us like an offering. "He gave me this the night he paid. Told me to keep it locked with the flare gun. Told me not to open it unless the person holding it could say the safe word." She leaned forward. "What's the safe word, Claire?" I hadn't known there was one. My mind raced through 15 years of shared jokes, pet names, the silly things we whispered in the dark. I licked salt from my lips. "Periwinkle," I said. The color of the bedroom we painted the summer we got married. The color he swore looked gray until the morning light hit it and turned it soft blue. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. She pushed the pouch toward me. I opened it with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. Inside, 2 passports. Dark blue, not American. I flipped the first one open. A woman stared back at me. My face, but not my face. Hair shorter, darker. Eyes harder. Name, Elise Moreau. Born in Montreal, 39. The second passport, Thomas. Or a man who could have been his brother. Beard, longer hair, glasses. Name, Julien Moreau. Husband and wife. There was cash. Euros, dollars, a few crisp thousands in Swiss francs. Enough to disappear for a long while. A prepaid phone in a plastic bag. 1 number programmed. Labeled only with a single initial, L. And a letter. 4 pages this time. Folded small, edges soft from being read and refolded too many times. I unfolded it under the red light. "My Claire, if you're reading this on the water, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every lie that brought us here. I'm sorry I couldn't fix it clean. They gave me a choice 3 months ago. Keep quiet and live. Or try to bring it down and maybe not. I thought I could do both.
I thought I could thread the needle. I was wrong. The night I gave Captain Reyes this pouch, I still believed we could vanish together. I had tickets, I had a house on a coast where no one asks questions. I was going to tell you everything the morning after the last transfer. I was going to beg, but they moved faster. If you're alone, it means I lost the race. Take the name, take the money, take the phone, and call Elle when you're far enough out that the signal dies. She'll know what to do next. Live the life we were supposed to have, even if it's under different stars. I loved you clean, Claire, every day, even when everything else was dirty. Forgive me for planning to leave without you. I thought the only way to keep you safe was to become someone who never existed. Be someone new now. Be safe, be far. I love you at every latitude. Thomas. The paper shook so hard the words blurred. Captain Reyes watched me read. She didn't look away. She didn't offer tissues or comfort. She just waited, the way the sea waits. When I folded the letter, my hands were steady for the first time in days. I looked at her. Was he going to leave me? My voice cracked on the last word. She took a slow sip of her own coffee. He sat right where you're sitting, cried like a man who'd lost before he started, said he couldn't ask you to give up your whole life for his mistake, said if he could get clean away first, he'd send for you proper. But he paid for 2 seats either way. She set her mug down. Men plan. The ocean laughs. The boat rocked gently, as if agreeing. I looked at the passports again. Elise Moreau stared back, calm, unknown, free. I slipped everything back into the pouch except the letter. That one I kept in my.
Any reason someone would want to hurt you? Your husband? I looked past him to the house. The roof sagged suddenly, a long, tired sigh, sending sparks swirling up into the rain like fireflies saying goodbye. Thomas's voice from the boat letter echoed soft in my head. If they ever touch you, it's because I failed. I met Lopez's eyes. My husband died 2 weeks ago, I said. Car accident. Maybe someone didn't like how much insurance I got. It wasn't even a good lie, but it was the kind people expect from a grieving widow. He wrote it down anyway. They kept me there another hour. Statements, timelines, where I'd been since yesterday afternoon. I said Portland, visiting my sister-in-law. Gave them Lena's number. They'd call. She'd cover for me. We'd already decided that on the phone from the truck stop, voices low, both of us crying without sound. By the time they let me go, the house was a wet, black skeleton. Smoke still rose in thin, defeated ribbons. The fire chief told me it would smolder for days. I walked through the crowd. Neighbors reached out, hands on my arm, my shoulder, murmurs of sorry and oh honey and let us know if you need anything. I nodded at each of them like I was underwater. At the edge of the lawn sat our mailbox, miraculously untouched. Red flag still up because I'd forgotten to check the mail for days. I opened it with fingers that finally started to shake. Inside, catalogs, a water bill, and one plain white envelope with no stamp. My name typed on the front. I slipped it into the pocket with the passports before anyone saw. A young police officer offered to drive me somewhere, hotel, friend, anywhere. I thanked him, said I'd call my sister-in-law, walked away before he could insist. 3 blocks later, I sat on a bench by the elementary school playground, swings moving gently in the wind, though no children were there. The rain had stopped. Everything smelled of wet ash carried on the air. I opened the envelope. 1 sheet, computer paper. 3 lines centered. You should have stayed gone. This was your warning. Next time, we burn you with it. No signature. I folded it small and added it to the collection in my pocket. Sticky note, coordinates, Thomas's letters, the passports of people who no longer existed. I looked back toward our street. From here, I could still see the lazy twist of smoke rising above the rooftops like a finger pointing straight at me. 30 years of memories, photo albums, the quilt my mother made, Thomas's high school yearbooks, the silly mugs we bought on vacations, the bed where we learned each other's bodies.
Everything turned to soot and water. They thought they were erasing us. I stood up. The bench creaked goodbye. I walked to the bus stop with the calm of someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to become. Lena would be waiting at the agreed-upon diner in 2 hours. I'd give her the box Thomas meant for the authorities someday, when we were far enough away that names no longer mattered. I'd keep the passports, the cash, the phone with its single number. I'd become Elise Moreau for real this time. The house was gone. Claire Harrow was gone. All that remained was the smell of smoke in my hair and the weight of a new name against my heart. I boarded the southbound bus when it came, paid cash again, took a seat in the back. As we pulled away, I watched the column of smoke grow smaller in the window, thinner, until the clouds swallowed it whole. Thomas tried to save me by leaving me behind. They tried to scare me by taking everything else. They both taught me the same lesson. Some fires don't destroy. Some fires just clear the ground for whatever has to grow next. I closed my eyes. The bus hummed beneath me, carrying me toward a horizon that didn't know my old name. Behind us, what was left of the house settled into its own ashes, quiet at last. And somewhere ahead, the ocean waited, wide, deep, and willing to keep a secret if you ask it right. They looked for Claire Harrow the way people look for a lost earring, with hope at first, then routine, then quiet embarrassment when the search turns up nothing but dust. The police came to Lena's door 3 days after the fire. 2 detectives in cheap wool coats that smelled of rain and coffee gone cold. They sat at her kitchen table and asked the same questions I had rehearsed with her over a payphone at 2 a.m. Where did Claire say she was going? Did she seem frightened? Did she mention anyone following her? Lena cried exactly the right amount. Showed them the spare room with the unmade bed, the empty hangers in the closet, the note I'd left on the dresser in my own handwriting. Lena, I can't breathe here anymore. I need to be where no one knows what I lost. Don't look for me. Tell them I'm sorry. I love you. Claire. They took the note away in an evidence bag, nodded kindly, promised to keep looking. The library accepted my resignation the same week. A short, polite letter mailed from 3 states away. Mrs. Ellis read it aloud to the staff with a trembling voice and then closed the doors for half a day so everyone could grieve properly. The bank discovered my account strained and closed. Clean transfers, offshore, untraceable. The insurance company on the house sighed and paid out to an address that no longer existed. Poor Claire, overwhelmed by grief, had simply walked into the sea one foggy night. Or taken a bus to somewhere warm and started over without telling a soul. Either way, she was gone. Lena received the postcard in February. It came on a day when the snow refused to melt, just lay on the ground like something ashamed. No return address. Postmarked from a small port town in Portugal I had never heard of before I became someone else. The front was a black and white photograph. A quiet harbor at sunrise, fishing boats bobbing gentle, mist curling off the water like cigarette smoke. On the back, only my handwriting. Smaller now, more careful. He tried to save me. I finally saved myself. Burn the box if they come again. Live loud, little sister. C. Lena held it to the light to be sure it was real, then slipped it into the pages of the cookbook Thomas gave her the year he learned to make bread. She never showed it to the detectives, who still came by every few months with new questions and older eyes. Years passed the way tides do. Slow enough that you swear nothing is moving, fast enough that one day you look up and the shoreline has changed completely. I became Elise Moreau the way a shoreline becomes something new, one grain at a time, until no one remembers what it used to be. I cut my hair short the first week, dyed it the color of strong tea. Learned to speak French with the accent of someone who grew up between languages. Rented a room above a bakery that smelled of almond and wood smoke every morning at 5. took work restoring old books for a woman who paid in cash and never asked for papers. Some nights I walked the seawall when the moon was thin. The Atlantic here is different, warmer, lazier, but it still knows how to keep secrets. I would stand at the edge and let the wind take the last of whatever Claire had left behind. I never used the phone with the single number. I never became Julian Moreau's wife. Some ghosts are kinder when you leave them waiting at the altar. I kept only 3 things from the old life. The letter Thomas wrote on the boat, edges soft now from reading. The yellow sticky note that said, "They know you have it now," folded so small it could hide in the seam of a wallet. And the wedding ring, thinned by years, worn on a chain around my neck where no one could see. Sometimes, when the tide is very low and the light is just right, I take the ring out and hold it to the sun. It catches the light the same way it did the day he slipped it on my finger in that quiet courthouse with the peeling paint and the smell of rain coming. I whisper the same thing every time. "I forgive you, Thomas. Do you forgive me?" The ocean never answers, but it listens. It always listens. Lena got married eventually to a gentle man who teaches poetry and makes terrible coffee. They have a little girl now with Thomas's eyes and my stubborn chin. Lena sends photographs once a year, tucked inside birthday cards for a woman who no longer exists. I keep them in a tin box under the floorboard with the other relics. I never write back. Some mercies look like silence. 15 years after the fire, I stood on a different pier in a different country and watched the sun drop into the sea like a coin into a wishing well. My hair has gone silver at the temples. The scar on my knee from the night I climbed the rope ladder aches when storms come. A young woman sat beside me, sketching the boats. Her pencil moved quick, sure. She glanced over and smiled, shy. "You look like someone who's waiting for a boat that's late," she said in Portuguese. I smiled back. "I did once," I answered. "It came. I just wasn't the same person when I boarded." She laughed, thinking it was a joke, and went back to her drawing. I slipped my hand into my pocket and touched the edges of the folded sticky note, worn soft as cloth now. They never found Richard's body. They never found mine either. 2 ghosts keeping each other company across an ocean that doesn't care about names. The sun slipped lower. The sky turned the color of periwinkle just before night swallows it whole. I stood up. The young woman waved goodbye. I walked home through streets that knew me as Elise, as the quiet woman who binds broken books and tips too much at the cafe and never speaks of where she came from. Behind me, the tide came in gentle, erasing every footprint I left in the wet sand. And somewhere far away, in a little town that still tells the story of the widow who vanished, a blue house was rebuilt on the same foundation, painted yellow this time, filled with new voices, new laughter, new lives that have no idea what burned there once. The ocean keeps its promises. Some women don't die. They just stop being who they were and start being the space the world leaves when it thinks they're gone. I close the door of my small apartment, light the lamp with the green shade, pour a glass of wine I will actually drink this time. And for the first time in 15 years, I take the chain from around my neck and slip the ring back onto my finger. It still fits. I hold my hand to the light. Somewhere across the dark water, Thomas smiles in whatever place the dead wait when the living finally forgive them. I whisper into the quiet room, into the salt-smelling night, into the rest of my one wild and precious life. I kept the best parts of us, Thomas. The rest, I let the sea have. Outside, the tide turns again, and the woman who vanished sleeps sound.